So, do you think of yourself as a shaman or practicing shamanism?
I do. I taught it for, I taught shamanic practitioners for from about 1980, 1986 I apprenticed. In 1990 I started doing circles. So from 1990 to 2007, 17 years, I was running vision quests and, you know, circles and so on and so forth.
When I think of shamanism, I think of the shaman going maybe into the underworld, doing soul retrieval, contacting a power animal as an ally. Is how do you define what shamans do?
I mean, that all makes good sense. Although I would say that soul retrieval is just a name for another name for trauma recovery.
I
I
agree.
mean, it's just a different cultural take on it. It's a slightly different method. Um,
When you were doing that kind of work, did you find that you had parts that were separated that the people who were working with you helped you bring back and integrate into your psyche?
some of that happened there, and some of that has happened since then. In the last 10 years, 11 years, in 2007, you know, I've gotten all sorts of trainings, coaching, family constellations, energy psychology, and the way that I learn this stuff is I use on my clients what has worked on me. And it's very typical to go into some sort of therapy training and you're doing therapy on one another. And I've had various arrangements with, I do fairly heavy duty work with people, so I need, I wouldn't say mentors, but I need people that can help with the load that involves.
Now, what kind of meditation do you use to stay centered?
Uh, Music,
Hmm.
woodwork, and I'll tell you just quite simply why. Between all the rosaries and mental prayer as a Catholic, which I never felt somehow worked, and then having this Kundalini thing, I don't easily meditate. Uh, and so yeah, I do it, but it doesn't go very deep because there's basically a scar there.
From the Catholic Church and the Kundalini experience.
That's what I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to get into the family constellation later. What what have been the influences that made you go on to graduate school and become a scientist and do cognitive science and system theory and linguistics? What led you in that direction?
In high school, I basically loved math and physics, and I loved the Newtonian worldview and was good at it. Um, but by junior year of college, I was realizing that I couldn't spend my time trying to figure out how many photons were coming out of a star a billion light years away because I was a crazy kid and I was suffering. And I had to get a little closer to home and start figuring out, like, how am I going to be okay here? All right. I ended up at University of Chicago, which was a very interdisciplinary place, thank God. And to me, I figured out very quickly that all the interesting knowledge was in the cracks. If you feed this people for 150 years into the same disciplines over and over, all the good stuff has been done.
Hmm.
But I was able at the University of Chicago to take what the linguists and what the literary critics and what the etymologists and what the philosophers thought they knew about metaphor, all of them, and put it together with some stuff out of mathematics, fuzzy sets and computational modeling processes, and come up with a way to understand how we understand, you know, how do we comprehend metaphorical language? At the time, the idea of metaphorical language was there will be some kind of restrictions on the words, like the rock speaks clearly right? Well, there's rocks don't speak, so somehow there's a clash, and we know that's a metaphor. And in 1969, I walked into the Chicago Linguistics Society with a paper called The Semantics of Metaphor. And I said, well, here's a bunch of sentences like the rock is turning brittle with age. And if you say them next to a cliff, it means I can chip it with my hammer. But if I say it about the president or my grandfather, it means he's getting senile. So there's nothing in that sentence that's going to tell you that it's metaphorical or not. Something profoundly different is going on.
And what is that profound difference?
Oh, that's kind of I mean, some of these answers are maybe a little complicated.
Okay.